Some grief doesn't come from your personal loss. It comes from witnessing something so devastating you don't know where to place it. 8 children, lives that should still be here, gone in a moment of violence. And even if you didn't know them personally, you felt it. You feel it in your chest, in your spirit, and I know many of you are feeling it inside of your questions. So, what do you do? What do you do when a tragedy like this shakes you, even from a distance? Before we go any further, if you've been impacted by what's happening in the world, go ahead, like, share, subscribe, because someone else is trying to process what they're feeling and they don't even know where to begin. Welcome to Sit With It. This is a space where we don't rush healing. We do exactly that. We sit with it. And today we're not just talking about personal grief. No, we're talking about collective grief, the kind that comes when something tragic happens, like this recent loss of children in Louisiana. And it affects all of us because moments like this don't just impact families, no, they impact communities, they impact parents, they impact anyone with a heart. I've heard a lot of people say over the last couple of days, I didn't know them, but I can't stop thinking about this situation. Parents looking at their own children differently, people feeling a heaviness they can't quite explain, scrolling the news, then putting the phone down. But the feeling stays because when something this tragic happens, it doesn't just stay on screen. No, it settles in your spirit. And maybe that's where you are, trying to understand why something that didn't happen to you still feels like it affected you so deeply. Today, I want to walk through 3 things you can take with you as you process grief in moments like this. The first thing I want you to take with you is that it's okay to grieve what you didn't personally experience. Let's start here. You don't have to know someone personally to feel the weight of loss. This kind of grief is called collective grief or communal grief. And it shows up when you identify with the situation. It shows up when you imagine yourself in it. It shows up when you feel the humanity of it. You're not overreacting. No, you're responding. I want you to ask yourself inside of this moment, what about this situation is affecting you the most? As a matter of fact, put it inside of the comments. What are you really feeling about this tragedy that occurred in Louisiana? The second thing I want you to take with you is that tragedy can trigger personal and spiritual questions. Moments like this often bring up deeper questions. Questions like, why would this happen? Questions like, where is God? Questions like, how do we make sense of this? And here's the truth: not every question has a clear answer, but the questions themselves, they're part of the process. What these questions do is they reveal so many things. They reveal your values, they reveal your beliefs, they reveal your emotional connection to life and loss. And I want you to know today that you don't have to rush to resolve them or to answer these questions. No, I'm encouraging you inside of this moment to just sit with them. I want you to ask yourself, what questions have come up for you as you have processed what's happening in Louisiana? The third thing I want you to take with you is that you can turn grief into intentional awareness and care. This is where we shift because while we can't undo what happened, we can choose how we respond. Moments like this can lead us to be more present with our loved ones. Moments like this can lead us to check in on others that we haven't spoken to in a while. Moments like this can lead us to support those directly affected. Moments like this also lead us to reflect on how we show up in the world. This is where your work begins. This is where your work of designing your goodbye extends beyond individual loss into how we live daily. Is what I believe moments like this help us to look inside of the mirror and self reflect. Because here's the thing: tragedy reminds us that life is fragile. It reminds us that time is not guaranteed. It reminds us that connections matter. So I want you to ask yourself, what is one way this moment is prompting you to live differently, to interact differently with the environment around you? I also want to ask you this, and I want you to answer it honestly. Have you felt emotionally impacted by something that didn't happen directly to you, even outside of this tragedy inside of Louisiana? Because, like I said earlier, there are so many things that are happening inside the world around us that will trigger our own personal grief, and they do have emotional and spiritual impacts on us. So let's take a moment. Let's take a moment like we always do, and let's breathe in, breathe out. Think about those children. Think about this family. And instead of trying to make sense of it, I want you to just acknowledge what you feel: the grief, the sadness, the confusion. And I would encourage you inside of this moment to just sit with that. See, family, some moments in life will never fully make sense to us. And this is one of them. But what we can do is not ignore it. What we can do is not rush past it. What we can do is not become numb to it. What we can do is feel. We can reflect. And ultimately, we can respond with compassion. Because I believe that even in tragedies like this, our humanity still matters. If this conversation helped you process even a small part of what you're feeling, go ahead, like, share, and subscribe because someone else is carrying the same weight and they need this space. And if you're ready to go deeper inside of your healing journey, whether personal or collective grief, I encourage you to check out my books on Amazon, Designing Your Goodbyes, and some other resources that I have. And I write them really to help you navigate grief with intention, clarity, and spiritual grounding. Family healing doesn't happen when you rush it. No, it happens when you sit with it. And we're going to keep this family, we're going to keep this community, we're going to keep the world that we're living in inside of our thoughts, inside of our prayers, and inside of our hearts. Because truly, and I do mean truly, there is still love in this world. And as long as we are living, we can give it freely and compassionately. Thank you all for your time today. Thank you all for joining me. I'm Dr. Dandridge, and I'll see you all inside of the next conversation. Peace and blessings.